And walking straight gives us permission to feel aligned and connected with the energetic flow of the universe, and align our access with the body, and know that Mother Earth is thankful that we are walking in health and helping her survive, and all will be well. Even though we're in for some quaky, shaky times, we're going to keep grounding the light and bringing and manifesting peace, and being reminded that we are the co-creators of the universe, manifesting that which we want, and we should try to be in alignment with positive things, with optimistic, peaceful balance and harmony. It basically boils down to being harmless and harmonious, and then you've had a good life. Because we love to always make our mark in the world and do good and do great, but if we're just basically a simple, harmless, and harmonious function, energetic patterns, we're part of the great orchestra, the great, like every great tapestry or painting is done stroke by stroke, weave by weave, and everyone plays a part in this world. And if I can get through this earth walk, my life, and be harmless and harmonious, I've contributed great to the great painting that has made here. And in the process, I might do great things, but that greatness comes from a sense of not necessarily the applause of a lot of people or the approval of society, the authorities or people, so much as my sense of connection to what's right versus what's wrong. And the majority of the great things that have been done by the humble people in the world that are the spiritual warriors, helping feed the hungry and help those in need. And it's a beautiful thing, and it's a very rewarding thing. And I'm grateful to be here and have a house of worship that we can pray and we can share and open up honestly, without fear, to speak our heart and go forth together as brothers and sisters, holding each other and holding this light.
Thank you.
First time an inner world that I had never known existed. So these were major steps for me back in the early to mid 1970s. But it very quickly began to take a momentum of its own. There was seemingly out of nowhere a 2-weekend training that popped up. It was called the S training, put on by a man by the name of Werner Erhard. And everybody, it seemed, was taking the S training. That is, except me. About 5 minutes, again, it only took 5 minutes. First rebirthing session, first meditation, first interaction with Drunvalo. All it took was 5 minutes or less in each case. And I realized that this, in fact, was the missing information that I was seeking. That, furthermore, it was the perfect complement to what I was already doing, and it was even better than that. From Drunvalo, I learned that really, in many ways, his teachings were paralleling an ancient Egyptian mystery school, a 12-year mystery school that had not been written down anywhere and had not even, in fact, been transmitted orally since Atlantis, and that would have been minimally 15,000, 16,000 years ago, and was recreated through Drunvalo with the assistance of an ascended master, a guy who was only 52,000 years of age, an ascended master by the name of Thoth. So the essence of Drunvalo's teachings was the recreation of this ancient Egyptian mystery school. Well, what I was slowly learning was that if you go back to ancient Egypt, in order to even get into this 12-year mystery school that Drunvalo was recreating in modern times, you needed, first of all, to have been a graduate of a prior 12-year mystery school. Now, I need to just take a moment here and clarify my terms. Going back to the first 12-year mystery school in Egypt the symbol for the school, and in fact the name for the school, was the left eye of Horus. The left eye is controlled by the right brain, so this first 12-year mystery school in Egypt was right brain, intuitive, emotional healing type work, where the initiate would spend a year in each of the temples, each of the 12 major temples along the Nile, learning the right brain intuitive aspect of the oneness of the unity of being. And specifically learning to consciously move through fears and limitations. The very fears and limitations that keep us trapped in the lowest aspect of ourselves. You know, they keep us trapped and blocked in survival. And they keep us blocked from the higher centers, which are the oneness, the spiritual aspect, the heart opening, and you know, they keep us blocked from experiencing the goodies in life. So the Egyptians thought that this work was important enough to spend 12 years in the process of teaching this emotional healing. What I'm getting at is that I unwittingly had spent exactly 12 years working with emotional healing in what I would call a modern day version of the left eye of Horus, essentially the work brought forth by Leonard Orr, the modern day process that most commonly is referred to as rebirthing, because it is emotional healing. And just to say briefly a word why I feel that is important. Number one, I guess I've already said it, because the Egyptians felt it was important enough to give it 12 years of study. But in a nutshell, my experience in 30 years tells me that any imbalance that we have, be it physical illness or disease, or emotional imbalance, or mental imbalance, all has its roots in emotional imbalance. So for my 2 cents worth, emotional healing is just about the most important thing there is. And I was unwittingly recreating this 12-year Egyptian mystery school, and then I discovered Drunvalo. I guess it's the same as saying I was ready for the second 12-year mystery school. And like I said, about 5 minutes into his presentation, which by the way was not a live presentation, it was a video about 30 hours in duration. Obviously we didn't sit there for 30 straight hours, but there was a group of about 20 or 25 of us who were like-minded enough and interested enough to keep coming back for as long as it took to watch the entire set of videos. So I realized that what I needed to do was get a set of these videos, and with the goal, with the intention of mastering the information. Clearly and certainly it's debatable if mastery is even possible. You could easily argue that it isn't, that there is no final destination, that you're just on a path, and there's always something to learn. I don't care how much you know about something, you can always learn more about it and expand your understanding. So with that in mind, my goal still was to master the information. So what I did when I got the videos, in essence, was I just sat down and watched them, and after 30 hours worth of watching them, I watched them again. And after that, I watched them again, and I just kept doing it. I just didn't get tired of it. I just was that single-minded that nothing else mattered. I don't know what to say, except one day I woke up in the morning and I kind of felt like, hey, I kind of understand what this guy is talking about. So out of that, more magic began to happen. Again, it's that 100% intention type thing. Just to give you a little background on my whole thing about being an author, I guess I'm a little bit unlike most authors, where I did not seek to write a book. In fact, I was avoiding writing a book. It was the last thing on my mind. It got dangerously close in 1988 when a rebirthing client of mine, who after, I don't know, about 5 or 6 sessions into a series of 10, revealed to me for the first time that not only was she an author, but that also she was keeping a detailed record, a diary, if you will, of her series of sessions with me. And she opened up her notebook and she showed it to me. She did have an ulterior motive. She suggested that we co-author a book on rebirthing. And my first response was, gulp. If you want to read a book on rebirthing, why don't you read a book that Leonard Orr wrote, or Sandra Ray just came out with a new book? What could I possibly have to say that could complement, that could top that? So I hemmed and hawed a little bit more and realized that when she told me that she did not have a publisher, that in fact what she was suggesting is that we write what she is called a book proposal. The essence of which is that you write one complete chapter out of your proposed book, and then you write just a sort of a short summary of the other chapters, and then you take that to various publishers in the hope that somebody will agree to publish your book. And I knew I didn't want to do that, so I used that as my excuse to say, I'm sorry, I just don't want to do that. I did not say this to her, but I made a mental note to myself. And I said to myself at that time, this was 1988, I said to myself that the only way I would ever write a book is if a publisher comes to me and asks me to write a book. And I figured I was safe. Until I met Drunvalo and got these videos and wouldn't stop watching them. And, you know, I occasionally saw a rebirthing client or two just to pay the rent and stuff like that. And one day I got a phone call from a person who called to inquire about rebirthing. But this person was a bit different from most phone calls, people wanting to know about rebirthing. You know, 90 to 95% of them at least were enthusiastic. They were sure they wanted to do a session, and they were just calling to make an appointment. This guy talked for about 45 minutes. He was not enthusiastic. He had many doubts and many questions, and he pointed out that he didn't believe in rebirthing and that he had friends who tried it in 1968 and didn't like it. I didn't have time to tell him that rebirthing didn't even exist until 1974. Somehow, after 45 minutes, this guy decided to make an appointment, and he came over to do a session. About halfway into the session, I mean, this guy had more doubts than I had ever seen from anybody in my life in this sort of a setting. But about halfway into the session, something happened. Something happened experientially. And so he realized that there was something real here, that this in fact was a very powerful, if not extremely useful process. And upon completion of the session, he discovered that he had a newfound respect not only for me, but also for the very process that I was trying to teach him. And so some space opened up, and for the first time we had a little time to talk. He had already told me on the telephone that the guy was a publisher, but I paid no attention to that. But when he came, he gave me a copy of the company catalog, and this catalog had it was just a cover full of little pictures, you know, pictures about that size, about an inch square. And in the very middle of this cover was a picture of the face on Mars. And I looked at that, but I said nothing. And I just held that until the completion of the session. And now, because there was some room to talk, I asked him. And I asked him what it was about, and he said that he is the publisher of Richard Hoagland's book, The Monuments on Mars. I don't know if you're familiar with the face on Mars and all of that, but it's not alleged, it's a fact, that in 1976, it was a Viking. The Viking was the name of the, what would you call it, probe or satellite or whatever the heck it was that we sent to Mars, that started taking photographs of the surface of Mars. And one of the photographs that came back was this object that's huge. It's about a mile in height and length and whatever. it looks very much like a face. And further research absolutely convinced Richard Hoagland and his team of scientists that, in fact, this thing was not a trick of light and shadow, as NASA would like us to believe, but in fact was created intentionally by some intelligent life form.